This week, you can find 3 different numbers for next year's Social Security raise. One group says 3.8%. Another analyst says 3.7%. AARP has been saying 3.6%. Here is the thing nobody puts in the title. None of those is the COLA. Not one of them. They are all estimates of a number that does not exist yet, because the calculation that produces it is not finished, and it cannot be finished until the end of September. So instead of giving you a 4th guess, I am going to do something better. I am going to teach you the actual arithmetic. Which index, which 3 months, compared against what, and the exact date it becomes real. It takes about 10 minutes, and then you will never need anybody to forecast it for you again. And near the end, I will explain the part that makes people angriest, which is why the number never matches how expensive your own life actually feels. I am Gil Hartman, and this channel does one thing. We take a Social Security rule, we open it up, and we look at how it actually works, using the agency's own published rules and nothing else. I am not with Social Security. I do not sell anything, and none of this is advice about your specific situation. Today's rule is the cost of living adjustment, and I want to warn you gently, this is one of those subjects where the truth is simpler than the coverage. Once you see the arithmetic, the endless stream of headlines is going to look very different to you. Start with the thing almost every article gets wrong in its tone. A COLA is not a raise. A raise is when somebody decides you should have more money. A cost of living adjustment is when prices went up and your check gets moved by the same amount so that it still buys roughly what it bought before. Nobody decided to be generous. It is maintenance. That distinction matters for a practical reason. If you think of it as a raise, then a small COLA feels like an insult, and a big COLA feels like a gift. Neither is true. A big COLA means last year was expensive. It is not good news. It is a receipt. Now the machinery. There are 3 pieces, and the first one is the index. The Social Security Administration does not use the inflation number you hear on the evening news. It uses something called the CPI-W. That stands for the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Read that name again slowly, because the name is the whole story. Wage earners, clerical workers. It is a measure built around the spending of people who are working for a paycheck, not retirees. Working people, hold on to that. We are coming back to it, and when we do, a lot of things are going to make sense that have annoyed you for years. The second piece is the window. The law does not use a whole year of inflation. It uses exactly 3 months. July, August, and September. The 3rd quarter. The agency takes the CPI-W for those 3 months, averages them together, and that average is one number. Then it takes the same 3 months from the year before, averages those, and that is a second number. Then it compares them. If this year's 3rd quarter average is higher, the percentage difference is your COLA. If it is not higher, the COLA is 0. There is no negative COLA. Your check never goes down from this. That is the whole calculation. 3 months this year, the same 3 months last year, percentage difference. If you can work out a percentage change, you can compute the COLA yourself. Let me walk it with round numbers so you can see the shape of it. I am making these up for the demonstration, so do not write them down as real. Say last year the index came in at 300 in July, 302 in August, and 304 in September. Add those together, divide by 3, and last year's 3rd quarter average is 302. Now say this year it reads 311, 312, and 313. Average those, and you get 312. 312 against 302. That is 10 points higher on a base of 302, which works out to about 3.3%. 3.3% is the COLA in my made-up year. That is it. There is no second step, no adjustment factor, no judgment call. It is one subtraction and one division. And notice something about the shape of it. Because we are comparing an average to an average, one wild month cannot swing it much. A spike in August gets diluted by July and September. That is deliberate. The formula is built to be boring. One more thing about the arithmetic, because a lot of people do not know this, and it changes how you read a low forecast. If this year's 3rd quarter average is not higher than last year's, the COLA is 0. And the law does not allow it to go the other way. A COLA can never be negative. Your benefit is not reduced when prices fall. That is not a hypothetical. There was no increase payable in January of 2010, none in January of 2011, and none in January of 2016. 3 years, no adjustment at all. And at the other extreme, the adjustment for 2023 was 8.7%, one of the largest since the early 1980s, because food and fuel prices had surged. So the range on this thing is genuinely wide. 0 at the bottom, 8.7 in living memory at the top. Anybody who tells you they know where next year lands before September is telling you about their model, not about your check. The third piece is the one people find hardest to believe. Nobody votes on it. There is no committee at the Social Security Administration that meets in the fall and decides retirees deserve 3% this year. There is no negotiation. Congress does not approve it. The President does not sign it. The formula is written into the law. The Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes the index. The formula runs on that data and produces a number, and that number is the COLA, which means every headline shaped like "they are cutting your COLA" or "Washington decided on this number" is describing a decision that never happened. If the COLA is small, that is not a decision. That is arithmetic on a slow inflation year. I want to be careful here because I am not telling you the system is beyond criticism. There are real arguments about whether the right index is being used, and we will get to that in a few minutes. What I am telling you is narrower and more useful. The annual number itself is not where any of that gets decided. Nobody sat in a room in October and chose it. That matters for your blood pressure, and it also matters for your attention. If you are angry at the agency every October, you are aiming at the wrong target. The thing worth watching is the choice of index, and that lives in Congress, not in a spreadsheet in Baltimore. Now you can see exactly why the estimates change every single month, and why none of them is the answer. We are recording this in early August. The third quarter is July, August, and September. As of right now, the agency has one of those 3 months. 1. So every forecast you see today is doing the same thing, taking whatever data exists, guessing what the missing months will look like, and running the formula on that guess. When a new inflation report lands, the guess updates. That is why the numbers seem to be one thing in May and something else in July. Nobody flip-flopped. Nobody was wrong before. There was just less information. By the end of September, all 3 months exist. The guessing ends, and the formula produces the real answer. So let me give you the current estimates, and I want you to hear how I am saying them, because the framing is the point. As of mid-July, the Senior Citizens League was holding at 3.8%. An independent policy analyst named Mary Johnson put it at 3.7. AARP has cited 3.6. Those are 3 careful groups, using the same public data, landing within 0.2 of a point of each other. That tells you the estimate is fairly stable right now. It does not tell you the answer. 2 of those 3 will be wrong, and possibly all 3, because September has not happened yet. For comparison, the COLA that took effect this year for 2026 was 2.8%. So the current estimates would represent a bigger adjustment than last year's, which is another way of saying that inflation ran warmer this year than the year before. Here is the date, and I would write it down. October 14th. That is when the 2027 COLA gets announced, right after the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases the September inflation figure. Everything before that is a forecast. Everything after that is a fact. And then the money itself moves in January. The adjustment applies to the payments beneficiaries receive in January of 2027, not October, not November, January. So the sequence is, September closes, October 14th we learn, January it lands. Now the part I promised, and this is the beat I most want you to remember. Go back to the index. CPI-W, urban wage earners and clerical workers. That basket is built from the spending patterns of people who are working. And people who are working spend differently than people who are retired. A working household spends a large share on getting to work and back. Gasoline, car payments, car insurance. Those things weigh heavily in that basket. A retired household spends a much larger share on 2 things that working households spend less on: healthcare and housing that they may no longer have a mortgage helping them with. So when gas prices are calm and medical costs are climbing, The index moves less than your actual life moves. Your COLA comes in modest, and you look at your prescription costs and your utility bill and think, that number cannot possibly be right. The number is right. It is just measuring somebody else's shopping cart. And I want to sit here a second longer because this is where people usually blame themselves. Think about what actually changed in your household over the last year. If you filled a prescription more often than you used to. If your homeowner's insurance came back higher. If the copay on a specialist went up. If you turned the heat on earlier because you feel the cold more than you did at 50. Every one of those is real, and every one of those carries less weight in that index than a gallon of gasoline does. Because the index is describing somebody who drives to work 5 days a week and is not filling prescriptions. Now flip it. In a year when gas prices jump, that index moves up hard, and retirees who barely drive anymore get a large COLA they did not particularly need. The mismatch runs in both directions. It is just that the direction people notice is the one that hurts. So if you have ever looked at the announced percentage and thought, either I am terrible with money or somebody is lying to me, the answer is neither. You are being measured with the wrong ruler, and the ruler was chosen in 1975 and never updated. There is a proposal that has been floated for years to use a different index built around older Americans instead. It has never become law, and I am not going to tell you whether it should. I am telling you the mechanism, so that when you feel that gap between the announced number and your own experience, you know exactly where the gap comes from. You are not imagining it, and you are not bad with money. One more piece, and I am going to keep this one short because it deserves an episode of its own, and it is going to get one. For most people, the Medicare Part B premium comes straight out of the Social Security check before you ever see it. When that premium goes up, it eats part of the raise. The standard Part B premium this year, 2026, is $202.90 a month. The Medicare trustees have projected $209.50 for 2027, though some private forecasters put it higher, in the range of $216 to $219. None of those are final either. That figure typically arrives in November. So the raise you read about in October and the raise you actually feel in January are two different numbers, and the difference is that premium. I will do the full arithmetic on that in its own episode. So what do you actually do with any of this? 3 things, and they are all small. 1. Put October 14th on the calendar, not because you need to act on it, but because that is the day you can stop reading forecasts. 2. And this is the important one. Do not change a claiming decision because of a COLA forecast. I say this every year, and every year somebody does it. The COLA applies to everybody's check by the same percentage, whether you claimed at 62 or you are still waiting at 69. It does not reward claiming early, and it does not punish waiting. A forecast that moves 0.2 of a point is not a reason to touch a decision worth tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. 3. Read the notice that comes in December. The agency sends a statement showing your new benefit amount for the coming year, and it is already net of the Part B premium. That letter is where you learn what actually happens to your deposit. Compare it against the number you heard in October, and the difference will teach you more about your own situation than any video will. Here is where I want to leave it. The COLA is not a decision. It is a measurement. It is not a raise. It is maintenance. It is not final until October 14th, and it does not reach your account until January. And when it arrives and it feels smaller than your life does, that is not a mistake, and it is not personal. It is a formula reading a shopping cart that is not quite yours. Knowing that will not put another dollar in your check. But it will stop a certain kind of dread, the kind where every headline feels like something is being done to you by somebody. Nothing is being done to you. A percentage is being computed, and you now know exactly how. My question for you, and I do read these, when the number comes out in October, what is the first bill you mentally apply it to? For a lot of people, it is the pharmacy, or the electric bill, or the property taxes. Tell me which one is yours, because that answer says a lot about what this program is really covering in 2026, and I would like to see it in one place. I am Gil Hartman. This is Social Security Decoded, and I will see you in the next one.